Welcome back to the Bat-Blitz of 2016, where we are celebrating the 50th anniversary of the live-action Batman TV show all year long here on Terrific TV Toys. Series 4 is what we're moving on to now in this collection by Figures Toy Company. And in this series, we have got, let's see, a guy who likes to read, a guy who likes to freeze, a guy who thinks he's an ancient king, and a guy who serves tea. Okay, anybody who was around in the 1970s, remember how King Tut was a thing back then? King Tut was pretty popular. I'm talking about the real King Tut, the boy king, the pharaoh that lived from 1341 BC to 1323 BC and died at only 18 years of age. And boy king, I mean that he was like 9 or 10 when he took the throne, very young. And of course his tomb, when it was discovered in 1922, brought him into, I guess, pop culture lore. He became very popular, and so everybody was talking about this kind of otherwise obscure pharaoh from the Egyptian history. And in the 1970s, there was an exhibit of antiquities discovered in Tut's tomb that were touring the world. The Metropolitan Museum of Art was the host of that exhibit here in the United States, and 8 million people went to see it there at the Met. Wow, no wonder King Tut was so popular. And objects from his tomb have toured the U.S. since then, but that 1970s tour was really big and, you know, like I said, brought him into the forefront. And then you have Steve Martin's song King Tut, which was released in 1978. I joked about that a little bit in last week's episode, but I remember people were singing that, and it's very funny. And if you search, after you view this episode, of course, if you search on YouTube here for the King Tut, I don't know what you'd search under, I don't remember the name of the video, but it's a video that has the Steve Martin song in the background as you see clips of this guy right here, Victor Buono, in the role of King Tut on the 1966 Batman TV series. It's very cute, so it's worth a view if you want to search for it. Victor Buono was born February 3rd, 1938, and died on January 1st, New Year's Day, on 1982. He was only 42 years old, so he was relatively young. He was credited with 10 episodes of Batman as King Tut. I had no idea that King Tut appeared so many times. I guess he was in all 3 seasons, and he's the only villain besides the big 4, Joker, Riddler, Catwoman, Penguin, to appear in all 3 seasons of the show. So they must have liked this guy a lot in this role. And he was very funny because his whole thing was he was a professor of Egyptology at a university, and his real name is William Omaha McElroy. And at a student protest, he gets conked out with a rock. There's rocks being thrown everywhere. He gets knocked out, and he wakes up thinking that he is King Tut, the boy king. Of course, a little bit older and I guess a little bit heftier too, because the real King Tut was known to be slight of frame. So very funny episodes, and this villain created specifically for the 1966 TV series. He had some hired thugs that were called Tutlings. He also had an associate named Neela, who was played by the lovely Grace Lee Whitney of Star Trek, which is very cool. And some of the things that he wields in his life of crime as a villainous King Tut or sneezing powder, also a potion that paralyzes. So yeah, evil villain, very funny. Take a look at the back of the package briefly before we get him out. And of course, when I received this one, I was like, wow, that's colorful. And it seems like they've done a pretty good representation of the costuming that Buono had in this role. You can see maybe there's some variation there because he actually had fringe running across his front there, and this is not quite fringe, it's more like frayed linen-y type fabric here. But yeah, it seems like they've got quite a bit of detail here. So let's take a closer look. Let's take him out. the boy king here, not so boyish. So yeah, I guess it's been a long time since I've seen these episodes in syndication, but I guess he kind of went back and forth, thinking he was King Tut, then remembering who he really was, getting conked on the head again, and thinking he was King Tut. So, very funny. All right, and this, of course, is Series 4, as I mentioned, of the collection by Figures Toy Company. Get the twist ties off here. Yeah, I got to see, I went to the Holy Land on a tour in 1996 with my mom. We went to Israel, Jordan, and then a couple days in Egypt. And the couple days in Egypt were just amazing. I absolutely loved it there. Of course, I've always been a fan of Egyptian lore. And while we were there in Egypt, in Cairo, we got to go to the Museum of Antiquities, which is the, probably still is, I'm assuming, but back then definitely was the permanent home of the whole Tut exhibit. Not just what toured the U.S. and the rest of the world, but you know, a fuller collection of antiquities, and it was just mind-blowing. It was very neat to see. Okay, we've got the tubby mold here, like we saw last episode, I guess, with Mr. Freeze. I can already feel that he's got the belly here, so not the slim mold for men in this Mego-like series by Figures Toy Company, but the tubbier mold. Nice thing going on with this, do I want to call it a cape? Got several parts. Like this is a separate piece here, which is red satin on the outside, and then this is the part I was talking about. There's red satin on this side, but then purple satin underneath. Very nice. And then it's got the frayed, cottony, linen type material. In the back, we have Velcro, which we see everywhere in the clothing of these figures. And this amulet, I guess. I wondered when I first saw it on the package if it was on some sort of elastic, but no, it's just sort of a gold braided type string or rope like you would see with crafts, with bric-a-brac or little pieces that you make crafts out of. Now the headpiece, does it remove? Yeah, it really does. Okay, so neat little removable headpiece with the scarab here on the front and gold fringe and a white ribbed sort of pattern here. And then the likeness of the actor. Let me get this thing straightened around. Kind of reminds me, you know, I'm a big fan of the Secrets of Isis 1970s TV show. And it reminds me, this part right here reminds me of her costume. She has that same thing on her costume. So Victor Buono, here we go. Longtime actor, appeared in a lot of different things. A lot of great TV shows too, and definitely a comedian. And very funny. Oh, I see, that's got some Velcro there too, that we can take that apart. We'll try to kind of center it in the back. Put his headpiece back on. He's rather loose, like the Mr. Freeze figure that I showed last week. I wonder if the tubby mold is a little looser. I don't know. Just an observation. I love the sandals, like the old gladiator sandals that have been a trend in recent years for females. And it looks like his foot will slip out of those things. Yeah, he just kind of goes wild. I let go of one part of him and he just kind of flops all over the place. Now, they don't easily come off, and I don't want to force it, but you've got the standard articulation there, and they're cool sandals. Gold color, black soles, and got this sort of belt. I guess this belt connects with the decorative front here, and then a separate flap here on his robe, multi-layered robe, some overlay here on like a white cotton material, blue and white fine stripes, but then underneath you've got like almost like a striped effect on the white cotton here too. So nice detail. Another figure that, well, besides the headdress here that removes, basically all one piece, no accessories or anything. We don't see the sneezing powder anywhere here or the paralyzing potion. but basically all one piece. And then he's got interesting decor on his arms. Just a piece of fabric here that will slide and move, but it's gathered on one side. It almost looks like hand stitching. Can't quite see there closely. And it's like a soft, silky type fabric, same as that. So, yeah, wow. It's kind of hard to figure out how this goes, but I'm kind of befuddled. But this part is meant to cross the front of him, just like what you see in these screenshots. You can see that he's got that fringe going across. Oh, interesting little like scepter or something he's holding onto. Again, I have not seen these episodes in forever and a day, and I really mean to rewatch them all. I just haven't had the time. I can barely catch up with my DVR as it is, but I wish I would have had the time to view them all again before doing this series. Of course, MeTV shows them. MeTV being my favorite channel on Earth in the history of ever, and they show them on Saturday nights. This is interesting fabric too. So yeah, piece by piece, we've got an interesting yet delusional King Tut, who is adorable like the rest of the figures in this collection. And then next week we round out Series 4 with somebody who's not a villain. He's really a nice guy, and he's so patient and so polite and so regal. He's Alfred. So tune in next week.